So in 2020, in the eye of the pandemic, we raised 36,000 Singapore dollars for the Island Foundation. And the funds raised equated to 6 months. 6 months of learning for the foundation's 110 new students. And the Island Foundation is the only organization that continued to provide ongoing learning for kids as schools have been closed in Bintan since April 2020. So I want to thank the WiT community for helping us unleash these little butterflies so that they can spread their wings and do good by their families, societies, and the world. And we know travel cannot prosper without local communities, which is what this next session is partly about. So please join me in thanking our panelists for joining us to talk about the hard tech and dollars of sustainability. We have Choe who's the CEO of Pan Pacific Hotels Group. We have Laura Houldsworth, who's Managing Director and Vice President, Asia Pacific, Booking.com. And we have Khang, Nguyen, Trieu, who's Group Chief Technology Architect for Accor. Please join me on stage. Okay, you know, this is a hard topic, right? Sustainability, but we're going to make it fun and we're going to make it super relevant for everyone. So I want to first of all quote a journalist, Juliet Kinsman, who is the Condé Nast Sustainability Editor, in episode 5 of the WiT Travel Roadshow. And she said, "Show us you're sustainable, not just tell us." And then she said, "It should be a jailable offense to greenwash." So fiery words from a passionate journalist. And then I'm going to quote Andrew Dixon, who's sitting in the room here, who's founder of Nicoy and Chimpada Islands. And he says, "We don't market ourselves around sustainability or being necessarily even eco-friendly. If they are interested, they can learn about our sustainable practices," right? So 2 choices. One is show us, don't tell us. Or 2, don't sell or tell, just do it. Which approach would you pick, Laura?
I would go with, you need to practice what you preach. So let's all be doing it. If you want to talk about it, great. If you don't, people will find it. But let's do it.
All right. Khang?
Because I'm a bit French, I would say a third answer. But I would say do it and tell it. Because I believe that there's still a lot of things to do to educate the opinion on that.
All right, which is what the session is about. Peng Sam?
I'll just say, just do it.
All right. Okay, so now we're going to talk to you about how you're doing it, because you told me in an interview, you say, you know, it's not cheap, you know. You say you have to spend money to save money, and it's a long-term thing. So how do you convince owners who are struggling to pay their rent at this time to invest in sustainability?
Yeah, it's really not cheap, because we just spent 2.4 million just changing our double glazed glass, with a vacuum pack, so cold air doesn't leak out and hot air doesn't come in. Nobody sees it. The guest says, "Oh, you got a window," So it's not cheap. But how I would tell the owners is actually some of the benefits. So example is the Park Royal Collection Pickering. We got a lot of trees, right? If you see the hotel, it has a very simple system called a rainwater harvesting system. Right? Just by harvesting rainwater, we save 6 million liters of water that can fill 2.5 times of Olympic-sized swimming pool. Can you imagine that? I mean, if we tell the owners, look, if you care for the environment, just take a rainwater harvesting, and you will save all this, just and won't smile and don't laugh at too small a thing. Example, the water bottles that you have on the table. The hotels, every year we calculated per hotel use about 360,000 of these water bottles, and we it's single-use plastic. And by just putting in a water filter with 0.2 microns. We actually stopped using water bottles. Those pumps for the shampoos, 460,000 of those small little things, because the moment you use half, we're going to throw it away. And so small little things, if we tell the owners, I think they will start to believe in it. Yeah.
All right, so show them. Exactly.
Just do
Okay.
it.
All right. So, so on to the tech. I mean, Khang, you are the Group Chief Technology Architect. And so you told me, I had an education from Khang, I said 2 parts to the matter, right? One is green IT, and then one is IT for green. So green IT is your own IT and how you reduce carbon footprint internally. And then one big trend here is moving of data centers to the cloud. Did I get it right? Okay, so tell us what Accor is doing in this area and what kind of savings are you seeing just in terms of the green IT?
Yeah, so in that respect, we have been on the cloud for a few years now, but not enough. And what we are doing is accelerating our move to cloud, meaning that we will close all our data centers within 5 years' time. Why does that matter for sustainability? Is that different studies show that on average, you can expect to improve your carbon footprint regarding the hosting by 80% from moving from on-prem to data center. So to be transparent, it's not the first reason why we are deciding to go to the cloud. But obviously, the fact that it is having this positive impact in terms of savings, in terms of carbon footprint, is one of the reasons that we are pushing. And also, cloud providers today offer more and more tools to assess the way that we consume the resources on their cloud. And that's something that we can also leverage on. Okay.
All right. So then before we get into the second IT for green, I'm going to connect the conversation to the consumer, which is where Booking.com comes in. And you've done a sustainability report. And these are the findings. We're showing really sort of positive sentiment from travelers wanting sustainability, right? And actually saying they can't find enough. What was the most interesting finding you think that you would like to highlight here?
Yeah, I think, the numbers clearly speak for themselves, and we're saying the vast majority of people think that sustainable travel is now vital. But I think for me, the crucial piece here is the fact that over 60% have said during the pandemic that it's become even more important to them. And I think this is pretty telling. And I wonder why, when I think about this number, is it because we've had time to think? Is it because the lack of travel has actually had a very positive impact on the environment? Or is it because people have been traveling more domestically and they're much more connected to their local environments? And therefore, they feel that there's a desire to do more because they're not so far away from home. So I'm not sure what the reasons are, but it's very clear that there is a demand, and it is very clear that there is a requirement for our accommodation partners to be providing either to be actually doing what we need them to do, but also sharing that with the consumers who are looking for it. As it says, almost half say there's not enough. But we know, even from the esteemed panelists here, that accommodation partners are doing a lot. But maybe there's a lot that are still not able to get started or know what to do.
Okay.
I think.
So Peng Sam, any of these findings, surprise you? Because I think you talked about that you saw the customers from the West were a lot more easy about, like maybe not having the towels or whatever, but Asian customers were different. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, it is, strange. We get guests, from all over the world. If we tell them you don't need to, if you don't want to change the towels, wash them, just leave it on the towel rack, and they do, and that's great. And we don't wash them. But many times we find a lot of Asian customers. They actually call down and says, "Why didn't you change my towels?" But it's becoming more. The awareness is climbing up. And I suppose because during COVID, people are more aware of cleanliness, people are more aware of the natural air, and a lot more dining out, al fresco. They're definitely more aware. And I think that is a good thing for us. It's really important. Even plastic, people are then saying, why are we using, so much? And one of the things about this study that I really taken aback is, I think one of the studies says 79% of the Booking.com survey says that they would choose a hotel that has sustainability in it, whether it's accreditation, certification, they would choose. But 49% says they can't really find enough information all right, of such accommodation. And so I think people are really looking out to say, I really want to be responsible. How do I stay in a hotel that's responsible? Yeah.
So what is Booking.com then doing to surface, hotels that are, doing this sustainability actions? Because if 49% of consumers say they can't find it, what are you doing in response to that?
Yeah, it's really important as we address the increasing demand that we help our accommodation partners understand what they need to be doing. So we've identified kind of 5 key pillars across the sustainability platform, whether it is energy, waste, water, local communities, local environment. And within that, there are about 30 practices that we've identified that the accommodation partners can list that they are actively doing, and then we put it on their page. So we're enabling them to do so much more to make it visible, but also we're helping to educate them with handbooks, guidebooks, and education opportunities on our partner hub. So the demand is there, the partners want to get there, so we're just enabling them. As Peng mentioned, it's really about giving a forum to show what is being done.
All right, I'm going to take questions on my WhatsApp. Can you take now my number, 9692-4989 to the audience here. If you've got any questions, please WhatsApp me for that. So I read on Booking.com that you are currently displaying over 30 certifications officially approved by the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, a lot of them. So 30 accreditations. So I'm going to go to the audience now and ask them, do you think that there are too many accreditations, or do you think we need more? So do we need more accreditations for sustainability? A, no, why can't there be a global standard? Or B, is it to serve local needs? Or C, not sure customers care, price will matter more post-pandemic. Let's ask the audience that. Do you have an answer on that, Khang? I'm going to go to you. What do you think? Do we need more accreditations? Because hotel groups love accreditations.
Yeah. So really, I think we would need a global standard. I think it's really like in any industry, when things mature, you have a unique standard that makes it much easier, not only for the guest, but also for the industry to be able to know in which direction to go.
Also, a global standard that hotels understand, but also the consumers understand. Okay, so now let's move to IT for green, all right? And Khang, talk about how you use technology in your business to have a positive outcome on sustainability and profitability. And I know that you actually mentor quite a lot of startups. Tell us about an IoT startup that interested you at this time.
Yeah, so in one of the pillars of sustainability is the 3R, about reduce, reuse, and recycle. I think with COVID-19, the topic of reduce is becoming much more interesting for hotel owners as well, because it's a way also of saving cost. The big challenge for hotel today is that obviously they don't have so much capex to put on the table around the topic of sustainability itself. But if you look at it, there are some startups that we are currently looking at around energy savings, around air conditioning. So either mechanical solutions or IoT solutions that you put in the rooms and in the hotels, which are going to reduce the amount of energy by about 20 to 30%. So what does that mean for the hotel is that cut down on the electricity bill, which is a positive outcome given the context of COVID-19. And the good thing with startups also is that they also innovate in terms of pricing model. So instead of the usual pricing model of per room basis, which does not make sense when you have a probable occupancy, then today the startups are looking more at saying there is no capex for you hotelier to put on the table, but we are going to be paid on part of the savings that will be generated, which I think is quite smart in terms of pricing model. And that's the things that we are exploring, and which are becoming, I think...
so the reduction part. Okay, we got questions coming in. So, okay, I'm going to ask this of Peng Sam. How real are accreditations and how much are they paid lip service? Is it easy virtue signaling for hotels? Peng Sam.
I'll attempt to answer this in 2 ways. I think accreditation is split into 2. One is the building. Is it a green building? And I think there needs to be a separate certification for the building itself. So example, has the building got, now we're talking about triple glaze, not even double glazed glass, right? Talking about solar panels. And the cost of solar panels have come down so much. 10 years ago, we introduced solar panels in the Park Royal Collection Pickering. The return, 20 years to make the returns. Right now, we introduce it in Park Royal Collection Marina Bay, 6 years the return. So it's coming down, but there should be a certification for the building itself. Now, there should then be also the second part, which is the process, the hotel process. Example, a simple thing as this, you got, garbage cans for paper, plastic, and all that. It's not unusual. You will know. When it goes behind the scene, it all dumps into one bin. I mean, seriously, it's just for show. So the whole process for the hotel needs to have a certification by itself. We're looking at the certification ISO 14001, 14002 that specializes on the process itself. So I think if we have this in mind, we'll be able to cover, sufficiently and stick to, a few rather than a lot.
Okay, and that will really keep hotels honest then. Okay, Laura, we have a question. To what extent should platforms like Booking.com be responsible for prioritizing sustainable supply, which may or may not be profitable for the company?
I think that the key priority is for Booking and for all of our hotel partners is to make sure that the demand meets the supply. And so that, or the supply meets the demand. So make sure that if our consumers are looking for it, then we make it available and visible. And whether that's through a filter search or whether that is through a different display on the front end, it's really about giving what the consumer wants. And if they can search and find what they need, then we would prioritize it. Okay,
it's clearly, we have quite a lot of skeptics in the audience. The questions are very loaded. So I'm going to throw this out to whoever wants to take this one, okay? I'm going to throw the ball. When looking at the full challenges of climate change, do you honestly believe hotels adopting sustainable policies are going to make a significant difference? Or is it just greenwashing to make consumers feel better? Peng San.
Okay, I'm going to be honest in this. Not that I've not been honest before, but, hotels burn a lot of energy. Hotels use a lot of water. So there's a term called energy use intensivity. Urban Land Institute did a survey in 2019. Hotels burn 289 kilowatts per meter square. Just a comparison, office burn half of that, 181 kilowatt per meter square. Retail burn 81 kilowatt per meter square. So imagine the intensity even this ballroom, how much energy it takes to cool this place, it's amazing that the energy use and even water, all right, water is 2.7 cubic liters, per meter square. Office is just about 0.5. So you can see the major difference. So to answer the question, long story short is this, I think hotels, even if it starts somewhere, is improving the situation. So I'll give you an example. We put up 210 solar panels on the roof of Park Royal Collection Marina Bay. It only saves up to 2% of our energy use. All right, but what it does is the energy we use to cool the whole atrium is all about the solar panel. So I would think that it might look like greenwashing, but I tell you, it's one step ahead.
Right.
It will not totally eradicate it.
Right. So the answer is actually every little step counts, and hotels do make a significant impact on the environment. So every little thing you do matters, right? Because we have a huge hotel universe. So, all right. So we have another question. They're coming in fast, man. This is not a sustainable panel for me to run. Okay. Booking.com. How soon, in your opinion, will it be that destinations compete with one another based on provable sustainability credentials?
I think that's not far away at all. I think that the reality is if our consumers are looking for it, they're going to be looking for the most sustainable, and maybe they look at it in different ways. I mentioned the 5 pillars. Maybe it's about the community, maybe it's about the environment, maybe it's about the practices that Peng Sun mentioned. So I think that they will certainly. I mean, it will be a criteria that people are looking for, and therefore they'll look for the most that's relevant to them.
Okay, so we have a comment from a virtual audience who runs a traditional travel tour operator who designs experiences for customers. And basically she says that our guests ask us to choose hotels that are more sustainable, charming, and traditional where possible. So they sometimes leave it to us. Okay. So we have another question. Wow. Okay. Do the two hotels on stage know their CO2 per room night? This is a tough crowd. Khang, okay, Khang. Do you know your CO2 per room night?
The tough one, and to be transparent today, the topic of how do we measure the CO2 is a challenge. And typically what we saw in the startup pitch with the thrust carbon, I think it's one of the big issues in the industry to be able to measure.
All right.
Short answer, I don't know.
Okay, good. So that's something for you to find out, right? Okay, let's come back to my script. Where am I? Okay, what's the best news that you've read recently that augurs well for sustainability in hospitality? Just one news item. Laura.
For me, it was the result of the survey. The fact that the majority said they want it means that it will happen, and that's good. That's good news.
Khang?
For me, it was 1 month ago when in Accor we announced that we were joining the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance.
Right.
Okay, this is totally different. All right. I think there is it's not greenwashing, but there is a way to actually introduce plants in the building. All right. And Park Royal Collection Pickering, we put in 15,000 square meters of plants, right? And really what that means is plants can actually reduce the temperature, you will not believe it, of the building. And actually, it has a big difference. In Park Royal Collection Marina Bay, we introduced 2,400 trees inside the hotel. Now, this is something that we learned affects even the atmosphere of the hotel itself. Yeah.
Okay, so for Khang, there's another question. Do your hotels really measure how much is actually reduced, reused, and recycled, especially during major renovation? And do you share with your customers?
Yeah, no, it is one. It's still one of the challenges also that we have to tackle.
Okay, so clearly quite a bit to do, a bit of homework after this panel. Okay, all right. So Marriott and Accor have committed to net zero emissions by 2050. On a scale of 1 to 10, how challenging will it be for management companies with thousands of owners to meet this goal? 1 being least, 10 being most. Laura.
I think it's going to be very difficult. If you've got setting the standard is very good, and it's a bar that is raised very high. I think to get every individual on that journey is an education process. So it will take time, but it's a great ambition to have.
Okay, Khang?
On the scale of 1 to 10, I would say 7 or 8.
7 or 8. Okay, and Peng Sam?
I'll say 7 if I can explain why I say 7. Two reasons. Number one, I think it's a lot easier to change new builds, right? Because right now there's a lot of green financing, even for our Pan Pacific Orchard, 120 million of green financing. Now there's a lot of funds coming in for ESG, all right? And also governments, for instance, if you get BCA Green Mark Platinum, you get extra GFA. That means free GFA for more rooms. So that's a lot of incentive. So new builds, I think it's there. But the problem with a lot of hotel chains is at least 80% are all current builds, and not all are even that far into new. You got to change cables, you got to change electricity, you got to change piping. It's very, very expensive, and that's why it's hard. Yeah.
I think that applies to all investments, right? Legacy is always much more expensive to fix, and better to scrap and build a new one, which leads me to the next question coming in from someone. It says, don't you think that a real sustainable option is to stop building hotels, particularly in fragile ecological zones? Silence. Who wants to take that?
I can
Laura?
start.
Yeah, come on, go. Because travelers do want to go to ecological zones, right? So we can't stop that, but is there a way to do that in a manner that respects them?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it kind of goes a bit back to the earlier question as well as, can hotels really move the needle a little bit? And Peng just responded very well to that new properties are much easier to be sustainable. So if we know there's an environment that people want to go to, there's a demand there, then we have to provide them the opportunity to go. And the fact that we're doing it from new gives us the opportunity to do it in the best way possible. So yes, I think it's possible, and I think it's something that we should continue to do.
Especially with the new technology that's available right now. Okay. All right.
If I may say on this one, I think that the problem is not just some fragile zones, is that I think climate change, we start to see that it is impacting everywhere in the world. So it's not only about, I think, some special zones that where we need to tackle the issue.
Okay. All right, Khang, so you work for a hotel company, and, OTAs have always been faster, they build better tech. What is the one thing about the tech culture of an OTA that makes you go green with jealousy?
Yeah, so not so much jealous, but maybe nostalgic, because I used to work for an OTA back in France for 12 years. But I would say that OTAs are companies where tech is part of the DNA. So you find teams where business people have a very good tech insights, or you have tech people who have very good business initiatives. And I think that this kind of a mix is working very well in OTAs.
Okay, so we have a comment from Andrew Dixon in the audience, who says hotels done well can actually help protect fragile environments, right? So I think it's not black and white, right? It's a question of how you do it. Okay, Laura, I mean, you were in corporate travel before and all that. So what's the best hotel experience that you've had that made you go, this is what sustainability feels like?
No, I think it was a time that I go to Cape Town annually when I can, and obviously I've not been for a while, but it's one of my favorite places in the world. And talk about fragile economies, this is definitely one. And Peng also mentioned earlier about hotels are doing the best to say hang your towel up, reduce the washing, don't have your sheets changed. And I think we've always tried to do that as much as possible. But I was there in 2018 in March, and they were going through the worst water crisis ever. They were 4 weeks away from day zero when Cape Town would have no water at all. And yet they were still pumping water to the hotels to keep tourism in. And yet the local economy was suffering because of it, or local communities were suffering. And the hotel I was staying in did a campaign, Save Like a Local. And I just think that resonated with me to say, actually, yes, I'm part of this environment. I want to be able to come back here. I want the local communities not to be suffering because I'm here as a tourist. I want that to be a force for good and not negative. And so I think that's probably the biggest one for me.
All right, so it's actually dealing with the guilt sometimes when you go to a place and then you find that, much more energy is being spent looking after you than actually the local community.
Yeah,
okay.
If we're in that community, we should feel part of it and appreciate it that way.
All right. So, Khang, it is said that the best tech is invisible. Can the same be said about sustainability, you think?
I think no, because I think that sustainability needs to be on the front of the scene today. I think we are really running out of time globally, and today I think that we need some success stories, and it's like in all adoption curve, you have the early adopters, and when you have a critical mass of early adopters, then all the rest will follow, and I think it's the same for companies. And today, if I think in the audience, we should ask name who are the best sustainable companies in the world. Maybe each of us can only name a few, which I think is a problem of today. For example, if you ask me, I would say Patagonia, but but then I cannot tell you 10 most sustainable companies in the world today, and I think that's the problem. So I think it should be very much visible.
Okay, so a goal for the travel industry could be that in, let's say, 3 to 5 years' time, we should be able to point out, 10 travel companies that absolutely kind of really do and do what they preach, right? And actually show tangible financial results as a result of that. So now I'm going to put you all on the spot and say, you got to name a place, okay? Given that both governance and social elements are key to sustainability, what destinations in Asia would you say are deserving of praise for their real commitment to sustainability? Laura?
I think you mentioned earlier, and I think it's Andrew in the audience from Chempedak and Nikoi. I think they actually epitomize an eco-environment where all travelers can go and enjoy, but I'm not shouting about it. It's just happening. And I think that epitomized it for me.
All right. Khang?
I don't know all the places in Asia, but I would name Singapore, because I think Singapore has a real challenge in terms of managing climate change, and that they are starting to put the shift on it.
All right. Peng Sam, other than Singapore?
I was going to say I'm biased because it's Singapore. Yeah.
Other than Singapore?
Other than Singapore, actually, you'll be surprised. You'll be very, very surprised if I say China. Because China actually is working backwards, you know. And I know it's a lot of pollution. We used to have properties in China that we had to put filter in every single hotel room, you know, so that the air pollution doesn't get into it. But it's coming back in the revenge. I think they're really relooking at everything from EV, all right, to having charging stations everywhere. And of course, they've already started with bicycles, you know, some time ago. So, but yeah.
First mover advantage. Thank you so much to my panelists, Peng Sam, Khang, and Laura. Thank you so much. Thank you for your questions. Thank you.